lot of printers poop, but could they do it a little less, please? Phil here in the layer by layer, where we're going to get down and dirty and talk about poop. Printer poop, that is. Don't worry, this is a family-friendly show. Most of the time. The first thing we need to do to decrease printer poop is understand why printers poop in the first place. And to do that, we need some B-roll and super duper high-end graphics. When your printer has just a single nozzle, there is one point that can be used to actually extrude the filament. This means that all the colors have to go through the exact same hole, which means switching filament with something like the Bamboo Lab AMS is required. For each switch that happens, it goes through a whole thing. First, it cuts the filament that is already in the nozzle. Then it retracts the bit of filament that will be saved back onto the spool in the AMS. It then pushes the new color through to the nozzle, but there is still a bit of the old filament left in the nozzle that needs to be pushed out. It takes a bit of time to do as it extrudes it out into the poop chute, where it then drops gently out of the back to be cleaned up later.
Good boy.
So, how do we actually limit the poop of our multicolor prints? There are two approaches: limit the number of filament changes, or limit the amount of filament that goes down the chute. And in both cases, there are a few ways to achieve those goals. We'll start by looking at ways to decrease the number of filament changes. The first and easiest way is to have a model that can have the different colored parts on different build plates, like this adorable puppy from Smoggy 3D on MakerWorld, who is coincidentally one of my favorite model makers. So be sure to check them out at the link in the description. And while you're down below, let me know what other creators are your favorite in the comments. In this multi-plate profile that I downloaded, each of the colors are separated and then you print them out and glue them together. As you can see, there is the dog's body on one plate and the eyes and nose on the other. This works great for folks without an AMS. But what if you have an AMS and you want this to be a single print? If you just drag those eyes and nose onto the main plate and slice it, you're looking at roughly 16 grams of wasted filament, because it keeps bouncing between brown and black on every layer until the black pieces are done. But this doesn't mean you're cursed to waste filament. You can instead turn to the print sequence setting. I've used this setting to great effect in a few videos, including my Pac-Man video, which allowed me to print multiple fruits of different colors on a single plate without the waste. There are a few things you need to do to get this to work. First, you select all of the black objects and right-click on them and select Merge. Then you go to Others, Special Mode, Print Sequence, and change it to By Object. This means it will print one set of items that are a single color first, and then move on to the object of the other color. With that done, you'll see a large circle area around the various objects that is there to represent impact risk, since there will now be objects of different height on the plate at the same time, and you don't want the print head running into them. You have to arrange everything on the plate so that those areas don't overlap. With those changes made, there is now only a single filament swap and about 1/10 of a gram of filament wasted, which is the same as you would have on separate build plates. One heads up though, this isn't always a win. To demonstrate this rare occurrence, I'm using these Yoshi eggs from Tiny Planet on MakerWorld. In this case, I have eggs that I painted with green spots and eggs with red spots. When printing by layer, this configuration poops out about 97 grams of filament. If I switch to print by object, it then produces approximately 112 grams of poop. In this case, because so many layers of both sets of eggs are white, printing them separately actually increases the number of filament changes, and therefore increases the filament waste. So it's worth checking your numbers before you commit to that print. This next strategy for saving filament sounds too simple, but I promise it's real. Take this llama from 3D Print Ye. Sorry if I'm not saying that correctly. One llama, 185 filament changes, and about 86 grams of waste. Add a second llama, 185 filament changes, and about 86 grams of waste. A third llama, and again, 185 filament changes, and about 86 grams of waste. 8 llamas, and it suddenly quadruples the... No, I'm just kidding. It's exactly the same. The waste doesn't scale with quantity or size of the object, because it is doing the exact same number of filament changes as it prints. So if you need multiples of something, print them together. Your wallet will thank you. The penultimate way to decrease filament changes we'll be looking at is through careful use of orientation. To demonstrate this, I've opened up the file for my Christmas tree topper with no ornaments and a star. Because only the star is a different color at the top of the tree, printing it only requires a single filament change when it goes from green to gold. This same thinking can be applied to models where you can print at a different orientation to limit the number of changes. And the last way to reduce filament changes is also the simplest. Just increase your layer height. The same tree topper, except with red ornaments all the way up, and so way more color changes, poops out about 34 grams at a 0.2 millimeter layer height. Bump it to 0.28 millimeters and that drops to around 24 grams. Fewer layers means fewer times the printer hits a color change. The usual quality caveats apply, but if your print can handle the bigger layer height, your poop bin and your bank account will be grateful. But what about stopping filament from going down the poop chute in the first place? For this, Bamboo Studio, and many other slicers, has your back. The first option is to purge into an object support. This setting basically just tells the printer to take a dump doing something useful instead of dropping it out the back. As we saw earlier, the purge amount of the tree is about 34 grams of filament with this setting on. If I turn the setting off, the waste goes to 35 grams. Is it a lot? No. But it is taking something that is useless and making it useful, which coincidentally is the same reason the original 3D printer gave for marrying me. This setting is on by default and honestly makes almost no sense to change. That isn't the case for the setting found next to it, which is Purge into Objects Infill. This setting is off by default, and for good reason. With the default wall thickness of 2, it is definitely possible for other colors to bleed through. I printed this purple and pink set of birds and checked this setting. You can see the pink bird's head has a bit of purple showing through. Instead of purging to infill, you can designate a middle child object of sorts, one that you don't really care about, to purge to. This has to be something that's the same height as all the color changing layers of the objects you really care about, and you may have luck with increasing the infill percentage of the sacrificial part to make it use a bit more filament. Going back to the print with 8 llamas, I can designate one of the llamas as the purge target by right-clicking on it and selecting to purge to infill, and then right-clicking again and selecting purge into this object. Before doing this, the amount of filament flushed away was about 86 grams, and after the change, it's about 79 grams. In this case, it probably isn't worth it because the one llama is going to look pretty wonky. But if you have a print where the color isn't important, it might be worthwhile. Finally, there is what I consider to be the single most important setting for keeping your filament out of the bin and your money in your pocket. This one simple trick filament makers don't want you to know: purge volumes. Above the filaments in Bamboo Studio, there is a button that says Purging Volumes. If I go ahead and click on that in the llama print, we'll see a chart with from/to in the top left. This indicates how much filament will be purged in millimeters cubed when going from the color on the left to one of the colors on the top. So looking at going from white to white, it obviously doesn't purge anything. Going to black purges 187 millimeters cubed, and brown purges 244 millimeters cubed. You will also notice going from a dark color like black to a light color like white takes more filament than going from black to brown. When going from dark to light, more purge is needed. You can technically set all of these numbers yourself, but Bamboo Studio is calculating these for you, and I don't think it's worth it to change it manually. Instead, I use the multiplier at the bottom. This one field will let you change all of them at once, which can save you both time and money. The llama at a multiplier of 1 purges about 86 grams of filament. As expected, setting the multiplier to 0.5 drops it in half to 43 grams. But how low can you go? I created a small cube that is black at the bottom, white, and then black again. I also added text at the top to indicate what the multiplier was that it was printed with. I also set it to lightning infill to keep flushing to infill at a minimum. I then printed out cubes with a 0 multiplier, all the way up by tenths to a multiplier of 1. If we look at the 0 multiplier cube, which is no purge at all, we can see that there is a fair bit of bleed from black to white and white to black. The lines are not very crisp. They're pretty blurry. It is especially noticeable when comparing it to the cube with a multiplier of 1, which has very clear-cut lines, and a white section that is much whiter overall, because it doesn't have black filament loosely mixed in throughout. If we look at all of the cubes next to each other, it seems like you might be able to get away with a multiplier as low as 0.5. Though I usually stick with a multiplier of 0.7 for safety. There is a lot more waste in a failed print than you can save with a lower multiplier. But you won't have any waste if you give this video a like. Remember to subscribe and check out one of these videos next. Thanks for watching.